When I read the spec sheet of the newly launched $599 MacBook Neo, I found things that worry me. And honestly, the first one surprised me. So if you're thinking about buying the new MacBook Neo, you should probably see this before you hit pre-order. And don't worry, this will only take a few minutes. Now, the MacBook Neo comes with a 13-inch display, Apple's A18 Pro chip, and Apple says it can last up to 16 hours on a single charge. And the starting price is just $599, which makes this the cheapest MacBook Apple has ever made. But hitting that price means Apple had to make some very specific compromises. Now, looking at the specs from a creator's perspective, the first compromise shows up in the ports. And honestly, this one surprised me. The MacBook Neo has two USB-C ports, but they are not the same. Only one port supports USB 3 speeds, which is the faster data connection, around 10 GBs per second. The other port runs at USB 2 speeds, around 480 MB per second, which is significantly slower. But the bigger limitation is this. Only the USB 3 port supports external displays. So imagine this situation. You plug in your monitor. Now the only high-speed port is already being used, which means you want to connect an external SSD, camera, or dock. You're forced to use the slower USB 2 port. So for simple tasks, this might not matter. But if you are transferring large photo libraries, video footage, or project files, that slower port can noticeably increase transfer times. Now both the new models share the same USB capabilities. Now, second concern shows up in the storage configuration but has a solution. The base model starts with 256 GB of storage, and for some people that might be enough. But once you start adding apps, photos, videos, and files, that space can fill up surprisingly quickly. For example, just one 4K video project can easily take tens of gigabytes. Now, Apple storage upgrades are usually expensive, but in this case, for just about $100 more, you can get the 512 GB version. And that upgrade unlocks two important things. First, double the storage, which makes the laptop much more practical long term. And second, Touch ID. It is only available on the 512 GB model. So if you buy the base model, you don't get the fingerprint login. Now the Touch ID opens a good segue to the keyboard. Apple lists a Magic Keyboard in the specs, but the page doesn't clearly mention keyboard backlighting, which Apple usually calls out when it's included. That may not matter during the day, but if you're a student working late in a dorm or someone working in a dim room, backlit keys can make a real difference. Again, these aren't huge issues individually, but together they show the kinds of corners Apple had cut to hit that $599 price point. Let's start with the screen. The MacBook Neo Display reaches 500 nits of brightness, 2408 into 1506 native resolution, which is perfectly usable indoors. But it only supports the standard sRGB color gamut. If you're doing basic tasks like browsing, writing, or watching videos, you probably won't notice a big difference. But if you're a creator working with photos, videos, or design, the colors won't be as accurate as what you get on a MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro, which supports a wider P3 color gamut. Now, the final compromise shows up in the processor choice. Now, the MacBook Neo runs on Apple's A18 Pro chip, which originally debuted in 2024 in iPhone 16 Pro Max. That's interesting because the iPhone 17 Pro Max already uses the newer A19 Pro chip from late 2025. So technically, the processor inside the laptop is a generation older than the chip inside Apple's latest iPhone. Now, that doesn't automatically make it slow for everyday tasks. The laptop should feel perfectly responsive. So, who should actually buy the MacBook Neo? If you're a student or a casual user, this could actually be a perfectly fine Mac. And if you're planning to buy it, I would recommend skipping the 256 GB model and going straight to the 512 GB version for just $100 more. So you get both more storage and Touch ID. But if your goal is to get the best value for your money, I would seriously consider another option. For roughly the same $600 price range, you can often find a refurbished MacBook Air with an M2 chip, and that changes things quite a bit. With an M2 Air, you get M-series performance, a backlit keyboard, a more color-accurate display, and a laptop that can handle creative work much better. So my honest advice would be this. Don't get distracted by the new colors. Focus on getting the better tool for the job. If you like honest breakdowns like this before buying tech, consider subscribing. But I'm curious what you think. Would you buy a brand new MacBook Neo, upgrade it to 512 GB, or go for a refurbished MacBook Air instead? Let me know in the comments. Thank you. See you in the next one.